Okay, so now it's recording. So your name is?
Helen Dexter.
Okay. So tell me again, start over about your father,
Okay.
including like what year he went to this one-room schoolhouse.
Well, I don't know if I can figure that far back. I'm 92 and a half,
Wow,
and so
you look great.
it's only God. But
So you went, when did you go to school?
I graduated in 1941.
Okay, and how do you know how old your dad was when you were born?
Yes, he was older. Well, let's see now. How old was he? Um, I think he was about 35 years old
Okay.
when I was born, about that. Now,
Okay.
he was the oldest boy in the family.
So if we
And
take,
his father didn't live too long. He died around 50.
so
So it was a big family. There were 8 children. 7 of them survived. So the oldest living one was a girl. And then it was him.
mhm.
And then there was another girl.
Uh-huh.
And so he was the one that really brought up the family. Because
Okay.
his
Oh.
father died young.
Yeah.
I
Wow.
think he died of cancer.
Oh dear.
I know his mother did.
Mhm.
And she didn't live terribly long either. So actually, they had a big farm, and he was the one that headed it up
I see.
because of his father and mother. His mother had a baby every year about
Mhm.
and didn't live too long.
Mm.
So he was the head of the one, and they lived in Meredith Center
In New Hampshire?
in New Hampshire,
Uh-huh.
which is very near, 4 miles from Meredith,
Okay.
and about 7 miles from Laconia, which is the bigger place,
Okay.
and where I went to school.
Oh, you went to school there.
Yes,
Okay.
and graduated there in 1941.
Okay.
Now he
Said he went to a
was
one room.
older when he got married
Okay.
because of the family, because
Yeah.
he really was head of the family.
Yeah.
And he had his 2 sisters, and he all went to school the same time at a little one-room schoolhouse.
Yeah. Wow.
And the reason for that was because he couldn't go to school because he couldn't leave the family
Yeah.
because of his father.
Right.
His father was a traveling salesman for shoes.
Oh, wow.
And in those days, that's how they bought their shoes,
Mhm.
was they didn't have the stores in the cities.
Yeah, right.
They bought them from people coming around and showing them.
Wow.
And his father did that.
Wow.
So he was not home much at all.
Mhm.
But they were very interested in having a good education.
Mhm.
So New Hampton was 6 miles away in the north.
Mhm.
And that's where the big school was
Mhm.
for everybody in that area.
Mhm.
And it eventually became New Hampton Prep School,
Oh, okay.
a well-known school.
Yeah.
And but back when he went to school, he worked his way through school. He lived it. Well, and this is how they did it. The young people would live with people in New Hampton,
Oh.
and they would get their schooling by working for the family.
Is that right? Wow. Oh my word. That's a great story. So your father was the fire maker.
Yes,
He-
at the school.
Uh-huh.
And if he didn't want a school, he didn't make it. And it was a very snowy day.
Oh yeah, I imagine
And
New
he went
Hampshire.
to school on a horse with his 2 sisters.
Wow. Oh my word.
And if they didn't have school that day, they all stayed home or went skating.
Right.
And there was a lake right in front of the farmhouse.
Oh, okay.
And so they, that's how they kept their things cold. They had a ice house
Mhm.
where they put the ice in the middle of the winter. And that's how they kept their food.
Wow. Yeah.
And I can remember playing in the ice house because on hot days we'd go in there and we'd brush a little bit of the snow, the ice away from the water and stuff that was kept in the ice house.
Uh-huh.
And it would be nice and cool
Oh, wow.
in the ice house.
Oh, that's a great story.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I knew about all those things.
Did did he ever talk about like games that he played or like rules or what subjects?
Yes. Well, what he did was they played on the lake,
Oh, I see.
you see,
Uh-huh.
and they would get their ice from the lake
Mhm.
and fill the ice house. And
Okay.
they did that even when I was little.
Oh, wow. Uh-huh.
And we used to love to go in the ice house in the summertime.
Yeah.
Because it was nice and cool.
Right. Yes.
And we'd brush it off a little bit.
Yeah.
And jump around on the ice.
Yeah.
And then he would have to stop us because we'd ruin the ice. And ruin it and just use it up,
Yeah.
which he didn't want done. And the ice house was a regular house,
Mhm.
about a fourth as big as this room. And they would keep having the ice house right up to the top, almost. And and we'd go in and play on hot days and
Yeah.
things like that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and also he had a horse, of course, and the horse did everything. Took them to school, all three of them, on top of the. He was kind of a workhorse, a little bit bigger than a regular horse.
Yeah.
And all three of them would be on top, going to school.
Because you have such fascinating. So your name is
Elsie Gorman.
Elsie Gorman, and I know you grew up in Selinsgrove, Pennsylvania.
Yes.
Okay, so tell me about what it was like when the Wall Street crashed and all that. Can you tell me how it made you feel?
I couldn't imagine what Wall Street crash was. Being so young, I can remember hearing everybody talk about it, and we didn't have many people with radios, and my uncle, the professor, had a radio, and we'd get a lot of news when we would talk with him, and nobody could afford many radios. Everybody was in that same financial area of not having much money. We didn't have bank accounts. We didn't know what a check was. We lived every week to week for our money, and we all were sort of very conservative, and I'm Pennsylvania Dutch, and we're very conservative and very positive about everything.
Yes.
And so it was a fascinating world, but you couldn't imagine just exactly what was going on.
Yeah.
And I know we didn't have any, like buying ketchup and mustard and stuff for your table. We didn't buy anything that wasn't necessary.
Oh.
I had a lot of relatives who were farmers, and they were well off.
I see.
And one of them had a brand new car, and that was fascinating to me. And we had once a year we'd get together for a big gathering, and whether you were second cousin or a fifth cousin, you were one of us. And we just loved when we had these summer get-togethers. And it was, I was very happy. I was very busy, and I didn't want my mother to have to work, and my father was not living with us, and my mother raised three of us together, and so I did a lot of housework. I learned to sew when I was 10 years old.
Wow.
I was making my mother's cotton house dresses for her work. She worked at the Phi Mu Delta fraternity for a while at Susquehanna University, and she just knew cooking. She was a country girl, and she knew cooking, and she worked herself up to the point where she was head of the kitchen at Susquehanna University.
Wow.
And I played in concert orchestra of the Susquehanna University, and we played at Seibert Hall in Susquehanna.
What instrument?
Violin. I studied the violin. Oh. My professor's name was Professor Hemphill, and he was head of the music department. Oh, wow. And when I got to play well enough, he put me in the orchestra with the college kids. Oh. And I was very thrilled with that. And I loved my violin. Other than that, I did all my mother's housework and helped her a lot. And my oldest sister taught school, and she was fortunate to borrow money from my uncle that was the college professor. And my mother borrowed $100 to put me in training at the Geisinger. And $50 went for books, and $50 went for uniforms. And we had everyone tailored to fit, each one individually. And that cost me $100 for 3 years, and my mother said, when you graduate, it's up to you to pay the $100 back to one of my mother's uncles that was a doctor, and a country doctor. They sent no bills. They accepted food or anything that the patient would offer to them. Mm-hmm. And that I can remember very well, how doctors worked. And talking about hospitals, Sunbury University, or Sunbury Hospital, did an appendectomy on me. And when I graduated from the Geisinger, I went back to visit them, and I offered to pay back what it had cost me, and I offered the surgeon also, and they all refused. They were very generous back in those years, and we always took care of our own families. We didn't have a place to shove them into, so we could go on being happy ourselves, and that made a big difference in how I lived.
Yeah.
Very, very much. I didn't travel with a bunch of kids in school. I didn't have time. So, but my mother always said, if you learn something in training, and also if my oldest sister teaching school would think my mother maybe used the wrong definition or pronunciation of words, she said, always correct me. She says, I want to learn as much as I can.
Wow. So was your mother the sister of the college professor?
No, his wife.
Oh, his wife.
His wife.
Oh, okay.
And also, today, if later before you leave, I show you a picture of my youngest grandson. I had 2 boys, and this grandson was the youngest of my oldest son, and that's something I can tell you in a few minutes. off. But also, my husband was a railroad engineer on the Lehigh Valley, ran freight trains, and was a buddy of another freight train engineer, Jim Lathrop, who lives on the second
Oh yeah,
floor.
that's right.
And he and his wife Lillian were very close friends of ours.
Yeah, that's
Uh-huh.
right. Yep, I know him.
And so it's I like railroading. I like talking with them. And that was
Yeah.
our dinner conversation.
Yeah.
It was always, when they came in off the run,
Mm.
was always that. Now, my first son died with Agent Orange from the
Oh.
war.
Oh.
And he was paralyzed from his neck down completely. And my other son is a lieutenant from the sheriff's department in Owego, New York, Tioga
Okay,
County.
all right, okay.
And he's retired for a couple of years now.
Mhm.
He's been retired. And I have 12 great-grandsons.
Wow.
5 or 6 biological and 6 from wives that 2 of the grandsons married and the wives had kids
Okay.
from another marriage.
Right.
My life is so busy. I'm so concerned, and my granddaughter, since she was married to my son, has always been at one time or another during the day at my house with the kids. She always brought the kids, and they'd come evenings when her husband was working, and we'd have coffee and read the newspapers, and the kids grew up in my house half the time.
Wow. Well, you must have provided a really happy home
And
where they
now
wanted to
I
come.
miss them because their wives are working, their husbands are busy working, and they are in school. And the worse than that is I have no one to talk to. I have 3 that died already from 100, and I have another one that's that is 100 and are going to be 100, and I can't talk to them about old times because they're all young. Like, you wouldn't know if I asked you the question. You wouldn't know.
Yeah. Mhm.
It's very disappointing
Yeah,
to
yeah.
lose your friends.
Yeah.
But I have these grandsons, and they do come, and they brought me a beautiful gift, the youngest grandson, and it's up on the wall, a big plaque that my one great-grandson and great-granddaughter drew. And she's a little 11-year-old girl that plays the piano down in the lobby a lot.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Down
Oh,
there,
okay.
whenever she comes, she plays the piano.
Yeah.
She's taking lessons, and the kids are all taught manners, be polite,
Yeah.
and disciplined.
Mhm.
Uh,
Yeah.
and I consider concentration and discipline 2 of the most important words, and they are out of the Bible.
Yes. Mhm. Yeah.
Oh, I could talk on and on and on.
So tell me about when you were a school child. What did you go to a big school or a one-room school?
No, it was it went through from first grade to graduation from high school. The teachers, there were no male teachers because they were all in the service. And so if their wife was educated, she could teach. And if she got married, she could not teach because that job should go to a husband who isn't in the service and who has a family to support. So
Oh.
we never had any men teachers.
Oh. Huh.
Uh-huh.
Okay. I never knew the reason for that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And did you say who was it was it your mother who taught at a school, one-room school, one of your
Oh my, her father was a school
Her
teacher
father.
outside of Lewisburg, up in the sticks, up towards the little town of Crossville. It's out in the country, and Lewisburg is, and it was just a few miles after you went through Lewisburg towards Sunbury in that area. And I had a picture of him and his class. And
What year would that have been?
I can't tell you right off. But when my apartment was cleaned out and I moved here, I don't know where the pictures are. I have had quite a few important things like that that I was very fond of. So, but they all have mustaches.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So did he ever tell you any stories about?
I never knew him.
Oh, I see.
I never knew my. I knew one grandmother, or two grandmothers, my mother's and my father's mother, and my father and that side of the family were all from Delaware.
Okay.
And my mother was living out in the country in the Lewisburg area around there.
Okay. Okay.
And the school teachers, you didn't talk back to them. There was no feeling of too much love or kindness. Everything was so strict in teaching. And the one teacher was this wide and sat in a big swivel chair, never got out of it. She was too fat. And she had a stick this long, a big thick stick she used to threaten us with. And she never used it.
Yeah.
But she threatened us, and we were scared to death of her, and that was 4th grade. 3rd grade, everybody got a glass of chocolate milk if they were too thin. But if you were too poor, you didn't get anything. You had to be very thin and need the chocolate milk at break time. And we were so poor, and I was dying for a drink of chocolate milk, but because I wasn't thin, I couldn't have it. And that disappointed me. And my teacher said to me, if you don't do better in your work, you're going to stay in this room the next year. And I thought, not me, I'm not going to. No, in 7th grade, we studied what you might consider a little history. And I hated that class. I hated it.
Yeah.
When I got in high school, I didn't like history at all. And so I only did enough to pass, just to pass. I had a 2 years of, I had 2 or 3 years of French, and I had a year of German, and I hated English. But German was very difficult because the words aren't written in sequence.
Right.
You have to glance at the whole sentence and put it together.
Yes.
French was easy, and also my English and French teachers were sisters, old maid sisters, and their father was a country doctor, a cousin of my mother's.
Oh, okay.
My mother had 2 cousins that were doctors, one from Sunbury and one from Selinsgrove.
Do you still play the violin?
Beg pardon?
Do you still play the violin? Oh.
This whole side is numb. And my feet are numb. I can't feel anything with this hand.
Really?
I couldn't pick anything up. I can't feel. Told me eventually I will be in a wheelchair and I won't be able to walk at all. And I had surgery at the base of my brain, and it was pressing on the nerve. The nerves come out at the base of the brain, from the brain, and form your spinal cord. And my whole spinal cord was getting pressure from arthritis at the base of my brain.
Yeah, yeah.
And that caused all of
Oh.
this. And I have a few more things wrong in here that we can't operate on.
Yeah.
And it's very a little rough living, but I decided I didn't know how I was going to get through all this. So I sat down and told the Lord exactly how I felt. And I thought maybe I should just put it aside and do the best I can, and I would accept his decision of the way he's watching over me.
Yeah, yeah.
And so when I decided that, I just, my whole life changed.